In 2021, a new rivalry in the AFC was born. With the emergence of Joe Burrow as one of the biggest gamers and elite quarterbacks in football, the Bengals won 5 of the 7 games following the bye week to secure the AFC North, including a Week 17 thriller against the Chiefs, in which rookie wide receiver Jamar Chase absolutely destroyed the opposing secondary. Meanwhile, Kansas City had already clinched the West for the 6th straight year, and after some early hiccups, ended up with the number 2 seed. The direct matchup late in the regular season certainly made an impact on the final standings, but most people looked at Mahomes versus Josh Allen in the divisional round as the de facto AFC title game, which the Chiefs came out of victorious in one of the great back and forth affairs that we've ever seen. Yet, after already beating the Raiders and top-seeded Titans on the road, the Bengals went into Arrowhead and were able to overcome a 21-3 deficit before picking off Mahomes and kicking the game-winning field goal in overtime. Now, they are set to meet again in Week 13, with Cincinnati at 7-4 and Kansas City at 9-2 respectively, with Burrow and the Bengals looking to repeat as division champs, while the Chiefs are trying to stay in the driver's seat for the conference's number 1 seed. I want to dive into how both these teams are different compared to when we last saw them square off, the way that they've developed throughout the season, how they match up now, and where either side may have the advantages on Sunday. Let's break it all down. We'll start with the Chiefs' offense versus the Bengals' defense, in particular the run game. From the get-go, you saw the Chiefs put a focus on going under center more frequently this season, use 12 personnel increasingly, and go to more of a downhill rushing attack. Patrick Mahomes' scramble certainly helps with the numbers, but Kansas City is averaging 4.7 yards per carry, which is the highest mark in the Mahomes era, largely based on the way that they've transitioned to 7th-round rookie Isaiah Pacheco as the main ball carrier. He's handled the ball at least 15 times in each of the past 3 games and averaged 86 rushing yards per contest. What makes him so different to Clyde Edwards-Helaire and even Jared McKinnon, who has become the designated passing down back, is the attitude that he runs the ball with, constantly bouncing off hits and regaining his balance. That's why we've seen much fewer run stuffs and 1-yard gains rather than the rookie just ripping off 8 to 10 yarders. Early on 2 weeks ago at the LA Chargers, they go with this ace duo formation with those 2 tight ends on the left and run GT power towards the strong side. You see Pacheco get behind this traffic on the front side to get the entire defense sucked in, then cuts behind that, puts a move on the safety in order to rip off 28 quick yards. Later on in the second half, this is basically the exact same play, just the opposite way, only this time the Chargers don't contain the edge, and Pacheco does have the burst to punish them for it, quickly churning up another 18 yards, getting out to the sideline before getting banged out of bounds. Of course, they can still get into those spread formations from the shotgun and take advantage of the way this passing attack forces defenses to cover every blade of grass on the field. Here they are in a 3-by-1 set with Kelsey at tight end motioning in, and they run this inside zone play to the weak side. Pacheco hesitates and gives a little nod behind the center before exploding through that crease on the front side for 13 yards. Once again, just getting off a couple of tackles. And what that allows them to do is create easy big play opportunities in the RPO game. Back in week 6 against Buffalo, here they are in an ace duo set with twins to the right. And Mahomes can decide if he hands the ball off here to Clyde Edwards-Helaire on this inside zone towards the strong side, or throw this little rub slant to the backside to Juju Smith-Schuster. Mahomes sees the linebacker Tremaine Edmonds to the side step down and zips it behind him for a massive 41-yard gain to Juju, who breaks the tackle here and is ultimately chased down inside the 20. Against the 49ers Week 7, we saw Kansas City rediscover the jet sweep game again, which has been a vital part to the rushing attack. Mecole Hardman scored 3 touchdowns that day on that play alone, here from 25 or 26 yards out. And we've kind of already seen the fruits of the labor in that way, that they can affect those unblocked edge defenders along with the second level because of the way that they have to react to seeing this and the way it takes them out of run fits as Pacheco hits it here to the front side away from that action for another big gain. Now, running the balls effectively against the likes of the Jaguars and the 2 LA teams is a different story to what they'll be facing on Sunday against the Bengals. Look no further than what they put on display in just their last outing against the Titans, other than the 69-yard screen pass to Derrick Henry, where Cam Taylor-Britt chased him down and punched the ball out for a fellow rookie Treylon Burks to recover for a touchdown in the end zone. the Bengals held the King to just 48 yards on the other 19 touches that he received. With DJ Reader returning at nose tackle, this is a completely different unit. His ability to consistently beat the center across his face on the front side of zone runs was a huge factor in containing Henry in the divisional round. On Sunday, he routinely controlled double teams and even created some knockback to just create traffic in the backfield. In the 4 games he's been available for, Cincinnati has held their opponents to just 80 yards on the ground on average. Here's a play from this past Sunday that perfectly illustrates his impact, even though it will never show up on the stat sheet. You can't see it here from the end zone view, but the Titans have a far bunch to the left and are in shotgun. It doesn't look like Ryan Tannehill is actually reading the backside defensive end, but they're running inside zone to the right here versus this bare front, with just one linebacker behind it on 2nd and long. Reader instantly lands his hands and establishes himself in the frontside A-gap, forcing Derrick Henry to cut behind him, then takes the center and makes Henry run into that guy's back before getting pinged around like a piñata by the backside D end and the free technique. Of course, Reader can certainly make those stops himself as well. Back in week 3, before Reader went on injured reserve for the following 8 weeks, the Jets are trying to run GF power towards the weak side, as they use the tight end on a kick out on the defensive end on the left, and have the backside guard lead up into the C gap. But watch DJ Reader here at 2-eye technique, throwing the left guard off himself to show up right in that lane, and make Michael Carter Jr. look like he's run into a brick wall without letting go of his ankle. That's a completely different story to what we saw from them against the Saints and Browns, when both teams were able to secure the nose tackle on the front side, get the guard covering up the backer, and hit for big chunks to the front side for Alvin Kamara and Nick Chubb respectively in this case. That's not a recipe for success. Meanwhile, I really like what I've been seeing from the second level for Cincinnati, particularly Jermaine Pratt emerging as a difference maker alongside Logan Wilson. Check out this play from a couple of weeks ago at Pittsburgh, where the Steelers have a tight bunch towards the defensive right side and motion the offside receiver across, whilst running outside zone towards the strong side. But because of the communication with Von Bell to follow receiver in motion, Pratt understands that he can call a shot here, shoots through the B gap, and runs down Najee Harris for a tackle for loss. And he basically does the same thing later in the game, now on the strong side of this 31 alignment towards the tight end, shooting through the A-gap on the backside on this inside zone run towards the weak side. And then the other element in this is the way that they take some educated gambles with when to blitz Mike Hilton off the slot on some of these early down plays. Here they do so on the zone run away from the tight end in 11 personnel, with rookie wide receiver David Bell basically as an extra tight end. But as Kareem Hunt tries to press the front side, all of a sudden this maniac shows up out of nowhere and chops him down for a TFL. The same thing just happened again at Tennessee versus King Henry. The Bengals feel comfortable sticking in nickel personnel here against this ace duo set to the right. And when you can get those negative plays with a nickel coming off the weak side edge, you can even out those box numbers. It'll be an interesting area of the game to watch, because I'd say Cincinnati is more built to stop zone concepts, which the defense sees in practice largely as well, or at least has done for the most part since the arrival of head coach Zach Taylor, while Kansas City's transitioned to more of a downhill rushing approach and wants to win with creating angles for their blockers. Of course, if you want to beat the Chiefs, it'll be about creating disruption in the pass game against Mahomes and company, and that doesn't necessarily mean getting to the face of those receivers, throwing off the timing, and certainly not blitzing the quarterback for the most part, since he's absolutely shredded almost any team trying to bring extra pressure. At the same time, if you're trying to stick in some static zone coverages and live in this too-high safety world, they'll find ways to put your defense in conflict and slice you up as well. Now without Tyreek Hill, everything the Chiefs do runs through Travis Kelce, who is on pace for the all-time single-season records for tight ends in receiving yards and touchdowns. Here's one way of how they can keep defenses from being able to actually bracket him and get him open from week 11 at the Chargers. They have a tight bunch to the right with Kelce as the de facto Z and another tight end at the hip of the offensive tackle, who will release as a check-down option after widening the rush of the defensive end, while they open the middle of the field with what I refer to as a bench route by the single receiver and the running back releasing into the flats after a soft run fake. Meanwhile, it's nearly impossible for the Chargers in this cover one man situation to have the corner be able to stick with Kelce here as they're running the scissors concept. Him and the tip man stem vertically here, and you can see Kelce getting free behind it towards the middle of the field, picking up 27 yards on the dig route. Yet you simply can't overplay anybody in this offense because they have all the answers. Going back to week 7 at San Francisco, when they shredded one of the elite defenses in the NFL, this was a nail in the coffin late for any comeback hopes by their home team, as they now motion into another tight bunch, now to the left this time, and once again run scissors with Kelce and Juju here, where this time Kelce is actually the innermost receiver and runs the corner route, along with a whip route by the Z and a deep out on the backside. They even get some of the game's best here, as middle linebacker Fred Warner tries to cheat as the hook dropper here, rather than just trusting the safety dropping down, along with the corner in cover 3, which leaves Juju wide open sitting over the middle of the field, who ends up scoring from 45 yards out, and kind of puts this game away completely. And the way that they can bend the structure of coverages and break defensive rules is just insane. Here are a couple of examples from the Jags game in week 10. On this first one, they motion into a 3x1 set and attack vertically here with this post, wheel and bender combination on the trip side, looking from the outside in, combined with a deep crosser by Kelce from a reduced split. The Jags don't even play this badly at all, as they bring down the weak side safety late in this cover 3 look, but I'm not sure what you can really do here, as this turns into a hole shot for Juju for 25 yards, because even if the nickel turns his head here and runs with Juju, a beat later Kelce will pop up open, working across the field. And this one might actually be even crazier, as they now motion into a 2x2 look with a wide receiver stack on the left, out of which they run a divide concept with a 10-yard out and like a glance post, while working markers while they're scantling on what some people would refer to as a cross-country route, almost between those two routes on the left, along with a late curl by the tight end. Tell me how you would even try to defend this, as Jacksonville almost has to bracket the slot working down the post here in cover 3 again, because of the space towards the opposite corner, and MVS catches a pretty easy 18-yard touchdown with Mahomes running up into the pocket. And on top of that, they have a couple of package plays every game for some cheap yardage, where they create some kind of rub and hit somebody wide open, ripping off 20 yards or so. The Bengals were able to create some issues for this group last season, however, and they did it with defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo crafting a couple of game plans where he forced Mahomes to hold onto the ball, sorting through some unscouted looks, and committing uncharacteristic mistakes. Some of the ways that they peeled off defensive ends and used 3-man rushes, along some unorthodox designer coverages, was highly impressive, and it really felt like Mahomes just didn't know what he was seeing out there. Here's a 3rd and 12 all the way back from week 3, where the Jets sign an empty set with guys to chip both the edges and try to work this inside action with the seam route by the slot receiver and a deep dig from the backside. The Bengals show a 5-man pressure and ultimately also bring 5, only they blitz the nickel off the edge and run this stunt with the defensive end to that side, along with using Logan Wilson as a Tampa 2 dropper as they bail into this 2-deep coverage. Joe Flacco does have time to get to the top of his drop here, but he never even sees Wilson. Paul asks to get underneath this as he tries to split the safeties, which ends up in a pick. And it's almost returned for a touchdown. Let's look at another interception, this time by Jesse Bates, as they're facing the Panthers, who are in a 2x2 set with a tight end to the defensive left side, where they run this flipped bench concept and bring the opposite slot receiver across, along with a corner route on the outside on the backside. The Bengals use a very similar call, where they bail out Wilson after being mugged up in the A-gap, along with peeling off the right defensive end Trey Hendrickson, and ultimately rushing just 4. Check out the way that they minimize this window between the corner and the safety at the top of the screen, forcing PJ Walker to overthrow his man and put the ball in the hands of the safety over the top and Jesse Bates. This is a more subtle example, as this just shows you how physical Cincinnati can be when they go into man coverage. The Steelers run a simple 3x1 set with a tight end to that side and run this double post combination with a deep crosser but a single receiver. The Bengals run 2-man where rookie cornerback Cam Taylor-Britt at the top of the screen here knocks the shit out of Deontay Johnson at X and delays him working across. They stick with those 2 post routes, and Von Bell as the boundary safety doesn't just sit deep here, but understands that the nickel funnels that slot receiver towards him. Kenny Pickett tries to somehow fit it in there low, but he has no chance. And then of course, some of the specific pressure looks on 3rd downs are just awesome to watch, The Steelers are now an empty, and to be fair, run a very static slant flat combination with the 3 receivers at the top, and probably some miscommunication by the running back and Deontay on an in and whip route combination. But just check out Cincinnati here, given a clear indication for cover 0, as they have 7 guys at the line of scrimmage. Instead they only bring 4, yet get 1 defensive end unblocked, and another one being able to work around the left tackle, while wheeling out the nose tackle and linebacker showing pressure on the B-gap at the boundary. That crowds the window for Pickett here, and he gets taken down for a quick sack. Looking at this matchup through the air, Cincinnati can throw the kitchen sink at you defensively and really make Mahomes reevaluate post-snap, which doesn't mean that he can't extend for secondary plays, but they may want to get into more pro personnel and simplify what they can see from a coverage perspective. The Bengals, on the other hand, will be looking to give Travis Kelce some different looks and really make him work for his yardage. Now let's flip over to the Bengals offense versus the Chiefs defense, and I actually put out a video on Cincinnati following the 0-2 start this year, where I talked about some of the issues early in the season, whether it was some of the protection miscues, where defenders would be completely unblocked, or their guys just got whooped, leading Burrow to not trust his guys and run himself into even more trouble, some of the pass game design stuff, which I'll get to in a couple of minutes here, along with the predictability of the run game in terms of personnel groupings, down and distance. Early on, we saw so many zone runs on early downs and from 12 personnel, where those tendencies and a lack of variety made it way too easy to prepare for them. And then the change-ups for those were a couple of toss plays or pin and pulls, where there's still no misdirection, other than the classic fly sweep action, where it's all about players over plays, but without giving those star skill position guys any schematic advantages. What we've seen since week 5 is them embracing the idea of being a shotgun team, as the percentage has skyrocketed by 20% since then, and they're not behind only the Ravens and Cardinals at over 83%. Yet their rushing success rate, meaning the appropriate yardage based on down and distance, so 4 yards on 1st and 10, 3 on 2nd and 5, and a conversion on 3rd down for example, is now number 1 in the entire league, with the Eagles as the only other team to even be above 50% on the season with them. That's despite not using the quarterback in the designed run game, like those 2 other teams that I mentioned with Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray. And they're not coming off the toughest test yet this past Sunday at Tennessee, who are number 1 in defensive success rate versus the run at about 70%, despite playing with 6 or fewer defenders in the box, more than any other team in the league not named the Vikings. And still, without a Pro Bowl running back in Joe Mixon, Cincinnati ran it 19 times with the backs for 76 yards, right at a solid 4 yards per, along with some big scrambles by Burrow and the backs being very involved in the pass game. They had 10 explosive plays on the day compared to only 1 sack. Here are 3 runs that I really like now, operating with more space from those spread looks. Week 5 at Baltimore, they're on trips left to create the 6-man box with really wide alignments by the D-line, but they actually hammer it inside as they have this fake flat screen to the number 3 on the left and get solid yardage out of it with Mixon. We'll watch it from the end zone view here in a second so you see what's actually going on schematically. It's a trap play against the 2-eye technique Calais Campbell here, which allows everybody else to block down on favorable angles, and with the backs at defensive end having to play Burrow potentially pulling that ball, Campbell flies upfield and gets knocked from the side, opening this nice lane for Mixon here, who rips off 9 yards. Week 9 at Carolina now, basically the same look here as they're once again in a 3-by-1 set, and have this inbuilt flat screen option or fake, which I'm guessing Burrow is allowed to throw if that's what the numbers dictate, and obviously this isn't there because you have 3-on-3. Only now they're running GT power into the boundary, where as you can see from the end zone view here in a second, get good knockback at contact on the kick out, and the guard wrapping around onto a linebacker looking to fill, where Mixon is untouched here, getting through, and ultimately rips off about 30 yards in this run. And why not just run a draw play on 1st and 10? The defense clearly expects a pass here from this 2-by-2 set with a tight end to the right. When you watch those 2 linebackers drop out in this 2-high look, and you get the tight end working up to the backer anyway, still in the seam route, and Mixon recognizes the backside defensive tackle trying to cheat inside, who he navigates around for an easy 10 yards. Of course, if you then marry that newfound rushing identity with some RPO elements like the simple glance route by the slot receiver on the backside of this G-power play, That makes everything easier, and you can make defenses think twice about playing too high coverages with nickel having outside leverage. And that in turn opens up opportunities to attack down the field as an effect of that when defenses transition back to more single high looks. On the opposite side, with the Chiefs' run defense, which started the season off very strong through the first month, and while they've moved on statistically to some degree, nobody's really been able to take advantage of them in that area, even though opponents do run the ball a lot on them, the third most carries league-wide. In order to keep Mahomes on the sideline, they're allowing just 4.3 yards per carry, whilst largely living in nickel personnel. What has been encouraging to watch this season is even stars like Chris Jones buying in and being more consistent run defenders. We've seen them make those splash plays in the past, but here's a snap boy doing the dirty work. It's 3rd and 1 in the second half of the Week 11 matchup at the Chargers. LA is in 11 personnel in order to keep the Chiefs in what I'd like to call a big nickel, but they motion out of a tight bunch into this condensed 2x2 set and want to run G power towards the tight end. Kansas City is the D-line in an overfront with Jones at the free technique, and watch how he feels the down block by the right tackle. He gets his shoulders turned through the gap and bangs into the pole and guard. Austin Ekeler is forced to bounce outside. The Chiefs get off the blocks and rally to the football for a big stop. Jones already proved himself playing at the point of attack back in week 2 against those Chargers when he first faced them, as once again he's lined up at the free technique to the left here in a 4-2 overfront. And the Bolts try to run outside zone to the left, I believe, due to the backside guard cutting the A-gap defender. The Chiefs bring Willie Gay on the run blitz through the place at A-gap, but if the Chargers can string this out a little bit, a nice cutback lane could develop here. Instead, Jones comes in with heavy hands here against the left guard, quickly establishing himself in the B-gap, forcing Ekeler to stop his feet and make this jump cut earlier than he'd like to. Plus then Jones fights across the face of the guard and actually makes the tackle himself here, when the pursuit would now have a chance to catch up anyway. Another guy I have to point out here is second-year linebacker Nick Bolton, who already played well as a rookie and has always been a fun downhill thumper, but his range and quick trigger have turned him into one of the best run stoppers in the entire league. This is back from week 6 against the Bills, who are in 21 personnel but have the fullback flexed out wide to the left here, which puts the Chiefs in base personnel with Bolton and Mike. Buffalo is running a toss towards the strong side, where he pulls the center and plays that guard to the outside, which looks like it'll get to the corner. But as the center has to peel back on the Sam backer, check out how quickly Bolton gets to that spot, splits the two pullers for a tackle for loss, and a big play for the Chiefs. This is another great play here, as the Jaguars are in an ace set with tight ends to either side of the line and run outside zone to the defensive right side. As the plays at defensive end pinches inside, Jackson was able to pin everybody inside and get the offensive tackle straight onto the place at backer, and have this turning into a drive block on the safety as well, trying to set the edge here by the tight end. Bolton scrapes over the top of that action and shoots through the C-gap to create another negative play on Travis Etienne. Two ways I have seen teams have success against them in the run game. First is one of the Bills runs going back to week 6 again, where they had some cool designs that allowed them to create favorable angles. Here the Bills are in 11 personnel and motion the tight end in line for a trap play, where they use the way that Chris Jones attacks upfield against him with the trap, and then use a cross block between the center directly working up to the place at backer, and the right guard now has a simple down block on the backside to eye technique. Devin Singletary gets behind the center and then cuts underneath him for a pretty easy 8 to 9 yards here, and Bolton ultimately makes the tackle. And then the second thing to look at here is that they can get a little too aggressive with the way that they flow to the outside. 1 week later at San Francisco, the Niners had a traditional I formation with a tight end to the left, and run what basically is outside zone to the strong side, even though they pitched the ball after having the fullback shuffle a couple of steps that way, and then sifting back across for a kicker block on the backside defensive end. The will linebacker sees Juszczyk come his way, and kinda has to redirect for a potential leak route, which creates this massive cutback lane for Christian McCaffrey for an effortless 10 yards, it seems like almost. Now, in terms of the passing game, as I mentioned in the intro for this Bengals offense, they've become one of the true shotgun teams, where Joe Burrow has always looked more comfortable operating out of, and his success rate as a passer has increased by about 10% as well since week 5 in 2021, and this season to some degree. Their dropback game has felt very static at times, with standard route combinations like stick, slant flats, and so on. This play sequence from back in week 3 against the Jets perfectly illustrates that. On this first one, they're in a 2x2 set from shotgun, with the back already moved up into his gap, given as a clear pass tell, and they run a simple flood concept towards the weak side, with a shallow cross by the Z receiver in this reduced split, and a late hook route by the tight end. The Jets are in a double A-gap mock look and bail out into cover 4, and they just have no issues picking this up, with the interior rush pushing the O-line back into Burrow for the sack, as he has nowhere to go and just has to eat it. Then on the very next snap, they basically run a deep flood, now out of a 3x1 set, with the tight end releasing late into the flats, plus a backside dig route by the single receiver, and a little hook by the running back. The Jets can stick in the same coverage, and the field side safety Jordan Whitehead here is so confident in what he sees that he jumps and nearly picks off the deep out route, which is very rare to see, as the receiver has to play DB here to deny the turnover. Things started to really look different in this sort of breakout win at New Orleans in week 6, where here they're in the low red zone and come out in this empty trips left set. They run a smash concept with a whip route by the Z receiver and number 3 hooking up over the middle, along with a seam and square in combo on the right side with the running back. The Saints should be in pretty good position here to defend this in a simple cover 2, but unlike those other 2 plays that I just showed, those receivers aren't just running to spots, but instead they understand how to bind those slot defenders and safety with the way they stem their routes. So now you have the back breaking inside and the number 2 at the top of the screen on the corner route, both running wide open, which leads to a 9-yard touchdown by Joe Mixon. I love this element from the Titans game this past Sunday, where the Bengals had an empty set with a tight bunch to the left. The Titans bail out one of those mucked up players towards the bunch, so they get that 3-on-3 with a single high safety. But that gives them man coverage on the twin side, which is really what it's all about. And this is one of those where they know what the Titans know, because those 2 DBs think it's a rub play for the slot into the flats. But instead, as you can see here, Tyler Boyd jumps back inside and picks up his first down, even with the defensive end to that side peeling off and trying to get a hand on it. And here's something that I like as well from the week prior at Pittsburgh, as they have Hayden Hurst on his shake route versus the linebacker off a chip release. This might actually be an option route here, where he could read the leverage of the defender and work the space that's created underneath. Like he does here, easily shakes the backer and picks up a solid chunk. It's just these little tweaks that they've added to make things easier for themselves and their playmakers. Joe Burrow is also now skyrocketed from outside the top 32 to 7th in EPA per dropback versus 2 high defenses. They just seem to have more solutions available to them now. The Chiefs under DC Steve Spagnuolo aren't really a team that will allow defenses to dictate games against them, however, finding different ways to get to the zone coverages and then throwing some exotic pressures out there in designated passing situations where those DBs are very well schooled and understand what to expect as well as where the help may be. This plays back from week 2 against the Chargers, when 3rd and short the offense is in a condensed 2x2 ace set and run a mesh concept with a corner route by Josh Palmer and a wheel by the running back as the vertical stretches. The Chiefs sign quarters coverage and effortlessly pick this up, while the boundary safety Justin Reed here trusts what he sees and drives on this button hook by Gerald Everett for the wraparound PBU to get KC to stop on 3rd down. Moving forward to week 10 versus the Jaguars, this is another great snap for the Chiefs in zone coverage, as Jacksonville motions the offset Z receiver towards the stack to create a bunch and release into this variation of a flood concept, as the number 3 has this slot fade route going way outside. Number 2 Christian Kirk goes behind him on his deep out, and the Z has a whip route to get him out into the flats, along with a backside hook route by the tight end. Kansas City beautifully plays this, as you can clearly tell that Nick Bolton has his hips flipped that way, and there's not really a window between the safety and the corner here to fit this ball into for one of those hole shots that Trevor Lawrence loves so much, while both guys have their eyes on the deep out the whole way, and the pass actually ends up being batted down the line by George Karlaftis. Yet when they do go man coverage, like on this one robber coverage against the Bucs back from week 4, the corners don't allow any free releases, they funnel the receivers towards the help and typically don't get hung up in traffic. Here Tampa Bay is lining up in a 2x2 with the tight end to the right, running a glance slant combo over there, and a slant flat rub concept on the twin side. At the bottom, L'Jarius Sneed does a great job of fighting through the rub. And then at the top of the screen, one of my draft crushes in 7th rounder Jalen Watson sticks with Russell Gage at the top here, dislodges the ball on the slant route, and creates an understop. And then I just wanted to quickly show some of the stuff that Spags can throw in offense from a pressure perspective. As on back-to-back 3rd and 4th goal plays, they create a free runner and peel of Frank Clark here, who isn't even necessarily in position to defend his man. But it's just too quick for Josh Allen to sort through, while the ball is slightly behind Isaiah McKenzie on the second one, even though it could be brought in for a catch. They can really mess with your protection rules and get home before quarterbacks find the right answer. However, sticking with the Buffalo game, the Bills also showed one of the answers for how to block this stuff up, and they actually found this when they watched one of the adjustments that Cincinnati put on tape against Kansas City last year, as the Chiefs are bringing the house here with 7 guys and play cover 1 at the end of the first half here, but Josh Allen has enough time to loft the ball for Gabriel Davis on this 34-yard touchdown on a fade route, versus another rookie corner in Joshua Williams. And as we get to the end zone view here, we can see what the Bills kind of made it easy for themselves here, as they're in big on big versus the 3-down linemen, and those 2 guards have 51 and 32 respectively, since those are the guys that typically will be brought on a blitz. And then you have the tight end and the back responsible for the 2 DBs that could come here as well. They do send everybody, it's 7 on 7, but Josh trusts the protection and confidently lets it fly here for a huge touchdown. I think the Bengals have enough familiarity with their opponents to feel the same way. Now, can the Chiefs risk having those young corners on islands on the perimeter, frequently against T. Higgins, and also Jamar Chase probably returning off IR? At the same time, Cincinnati has to find some change-ups, maybe go back to more 12 personnel in this matchup, but run play action out of it to catch the Chiefs in base personnel and simplify what they can expect on the back end. I'm very interested to observe some of the adjustments we'll see by the coaches for this iteration of the matchup. The Bengals kind of had the upper hand in January, especially in terms of halftime tweaks, so Andy Reid and company will be looking to take back control, but they can dictate play to some degree with some of the game plan specifics that they pack. And then of course we have 2 of the premier quarterbacks in football who can change the momentum at any given moment. Burrow was magical last year's postseason run with the way he could get out of sacks and extend plays, along with delivering on critical downs, and he's now more comfortable finding those every down solutions. Mahomes will want to rectify those late game errors from the AFC title game. He's been a machine this season, and we've already seen him make those game-winning drives look easy, most recently at the Chargers a couple of weeks ago. This game may very well come down to who has the ball last, and if either defense can step up to get that one stop at the end. I could really see either side win here, and it'll have major implications on the AFC yet again. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video breakdown, please hit that like button for me, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and feel free to follow me on social media. The links are down below in the video description, as well as on the screen right now. Who do you think will win on Sunday, and how could it impact the rest of the AFC? I'm interested to hear your thoughts. As for me, I'll be back next week in written form, as I'll be doing my final power rankings of 2022 before the last month with 4 or 5 games left for each team. You can find that on my page, hellosforfootballtalk.com, along with all my other content in one place. And of course, if you're interested in following along with some of my observations about stuff happening around football, my weekly picks, bets I'll be placing, and so on, I try to stay active on Instagram and Twitter. So until then, see you later. Peace!